Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Jones. Welcome to Interchange, and thank you so very much for joining us. Tonight, we're going to talk about the chance for a recall election for Governor Scott Walker. Even if they get enough signatures, will the Democrats have a candidate and the money that would be needed to beat Walker? We'll talk about the federal government ordering Milwaukee to print election ballots in both English and Spanish now. And we'll talk about this nail-biter of a playoff series between the Milwaukee Brewers and the St. Louis Cardinals. All right, let me introduce everybody. We have newspaper columnist Joel McNally. Kevin Fischer, longtime broadcaster, political analyst, and oftentimes a fill-in host over on WISN Talk Radio. Angela Dressen, a manager of strategic leadership development for a local Fortune 500 company. And Gerard Randall, education consultant and job creation expert. Rick Horowitz will be along with commentary at the end of the show. All right, so the Democrats who despise Governor Scott Walker say next month they'll begin gathering the 540,000 signatures they'll need to force Walker into a recall election. They'll have 60 days to get that done. But even if they get the signatures, which most observers acknowledge is going to be a huge undertaking, will they have a strong candidate and a candidate who could compete financially with a Walker campaign? What do you think, Kevin?
It's going to be rough. Getting the signatures will be very, very difficult. That's a lot of signatures to get in a short period of time. And you better have a candidate ready. Who would it be? This week, a liberal radio talk show host was interviewing Marty Beal, who just lambasted Tom Barrett, whom you would think would be a candidate, although the timing might not be right because that recall election might come next April. Does Tom Barrett run for mayor? Does he run for governor? Does he run for both? I was astounded that Marty Beal actually compared Tom Barrett to Scott Walker, saying that he's not all that union friendly, and I think that's because of the budget proposal that the mayor is proposing as of late. Russ Feingold, I think, would be the strongest Democrat to run against Scott Walker, but he has basically said he doesn't want to do it. So who's out there? A state senator, a state representative? I don't know. I honestly don't know who would be the front runner if not Barrett and if not Feingold.
Angela, there was so much hatred directed at Walker during those demonstrations in Madison. Do you think that feeling is still out there, and is it enough to knock him out of office?
I do think the feeling is still out of there, but I don't know if it's enough to take him out of office. And I'm actually not supportive of the recall. I'd rather see the Democrats sit tight and to actually work hard over the next few years getting ready for the next regular election, and to spend that time and money on getting together a strong slate of candidates, getting them ready, really focusing on having a strong strategy and making some policy priorities that would mobilize kind of broader support.
This is going to cost a huge amount of money.
Yeah, it is, and there'll be a huge amount of money. One thing that assures that is that as soon as these petitions start, and then until the recall, Scott Walker can raise unlimited funds. So you know that the wealthy people that he keeps paying off in all the policies he's pushing through the legislature are going to flood him with millions of dollars, and the recall people know that as well. So they know they're going to have to come up with millions of dollars. You said 540,000 signatures is rough, Kevin. Truth of the matter is they're looking to get something like 700,000 because they know that the Republicans are going to challenge everything legally over and over and over, and those signatures are going to be going through with a fine-tooth comb. I don't think it matters that we haven't identified who the candidate is yet. Some people were throwing Herb Kohl's name out the other day, and I certainly hadn't heard that one, and I don't think Herb had either. But
going to happen.
But the truth of the matter is there are a number of strong candidates. Ron Cain, the congressman, would be one, and I think John Erpenbach and Peter Barca, who have been real leaders in the state against what Walker's doing.
I think Barca's
are obvious.
If it's that far.
But let me say this. Look back to the election. Scott Walker was elected. 30% of his voters were union members. 30%. Now you take those voters away from Scott Walker, and you've got something to start with. Believe me. And it's not just the union people that are upset. Anyone who cares about education in this state, all over this state, in every single school district in this state, is upset about public education being gutted. All the local governments who are now having to lay off people and cut their budgets because of what Scott Walker did to them. That's at every level of government, you know, county, city, villages, all over this state. Everybody is feeling the effects of this extreme administration, and I think there's a great shot of doing it.
You know, Walker says he takes this seriously, but I don't see a great deal of fear amongst other Republicans that he's going down.
Well, first off, I think Joel was right on many of the facts. I disagree with you on the spin. The reality is that, yes, there will be a lot of money raised because the governor presumably is at a disadvantage by being the incumbent being recalled. And as a result, the only way to even that out is by allowing for a relaxation of some of the campaign limits with regards to funding. So the governor will go out, he'll raise a lot of money, and that money is going to get spent beforehand because it has to be spent beforehand to kind of inoculate himself during the process where these signatures are to be gathered. So that kind of makes it iffy as to whether or not there will even be enough signatures gathered. Those that are gathered, they are going to be contested. That's only fair, given that
in any race.
In any race, that's right. That and also given that a lot of those signatures would probably come from folk who would be ineligible to cast a vote.
Under the new state laws that the Republicans passed to keep people from voting?
That wouldn't be. They'd be under any law that has been in existence. They would be ineligible.
Think about
you're talking about citizens of this state that aren't going to be allowed to vote on governor.
Well, no, I'm saying that those citizens that are eligible will be able to sign the petitions and cast their votes. Those that are ineligible
and we know a lot more have been made it a lot harder to vote.
But you know what? That's at the end of the day, that's not going to be the piece that will determine whether or not this governor holds a seat. What will determine it is whether or not there's a machinery in place to go out and still maintain the same grassroots level support, which he has. And that's why I don't think you're seeing so many Republicans upset at this point.
Yeah, these signatures, they're going from November 15th to January 15th. That's at a time when, I'm sorry, Joel, people are going to see that school classrooms are not busting at the seams. There haven't been massive layoffs.
Every school district in the state is having problems.
When they get their property tax bills, property taxpayers will see either they're staying flat or they're seeing big decreases. So I think it'll be very, very difficult for people to say, you need to sign this petition to throw this guy out when things aren't all that bad or as negative as Scott Walker's detractors claim they are.
You know what? I hope that there are a lot of legal challenges because the closer this recall election is pushed to the presidential election, I think the better. Yes, next year is going to be a great political year in Wisconsin.
Yeah, for the Republicans.
All right.
Yeah, right.
Next topic. Let's talk now about the city of Milwaukee being ordered this week to print future election ballots in both English and Spanish. That's because of the large number of city residents who are both Latino and, they say, not proficient in the English language. Now, Angela, a friend of mine called me when the paper came out yesterday with the headline. He said, if they can't speak English, they shouldn't be citizens. If they can't speak English, why should they be allowed to vote? And I thought, well, that's something to contemplate.
Well, a lot of people have certainly come to this country and gone on to be citizens and didn't first speak the language, and that's happened over generations. So, but when I frame this issue in my mind, I really think it's about engaging more naturalized citizens in the country. I mean, I think it's wrong to frame it as a way to get more people who are here legally to vote. I mean, that's not what it's about, so I don't think that should be confused. While this policy is new for us, it's not new across the country. I mean, this has been happening for the last decade. So, and it's something that I think there are some concerns just given, what it's going to take to execute it and what it's going to take financially. So I think we'll need to be smart about that. So I think that's a tricky piece. But there are other areas in the country that are looking at how to do this with the Korean language, Vietnamese, so Chinese. So it's getting very complex in certain areas. So I think that'll be a little bit difficult. But again, I think there are probably some best practices out there that can help guide us as we implement it. Maybe looking at bilingual workers, maybe looking at sample ballots. But I think we can do it smartly and engage more people in the process.
Kevin, would it be simple or simple-minded to say, no, the language in this country is English, the ballots will be in English, and that's it?
That's common sense. we should be encouraging people to assimilate in this country, and this does just the opposite. I mean, where do you draw the line? What about Polish? What about German? What about Irish, Japanese, Chinese, Taiwanese? The cost is a factor. Now, I worked for the state government for a long, long time, and locals, in this case, who are going to bear the burden of the cost, the entire cost, were always griping, and rightfully so, that the state would issue these unfunded mandates. You must do this, you must do that. Oh, by the way, we're not going to help you. We're not going to give you a dime. Well, this is an unfunded mandate from the federal government. And again, where do you draw the line? How many different languages are you going to cater to? Are you going to also mandate that there be interpreters at the polling locations? It doesn't end. The feds have said, you've got to do this, you've got to do this, but they have not given local municipalities the tools, the financial tools to pull this off.
Do they have to draw the line somewhere?
Oh, yes, they're going to have to draw the line someplace, because at some point there will be another court challenge to this, and until the Supreme Court ultimately rules on what the baseline language is going to be for these ballots and many other things, they're going to continue to have these arguments about what should be the official languages that are used on these documents. You know, if you go back in history, we almost had German as the official language for the U.S. We were only a few votes off from having that be the official language for the citizens.
We hadn't won World War II, it might have been.
Well, unfortunately we did. But if you look at some of the realities in this country and the world as a whole, we are multi-languaged, languages that, for the most part, many people in this country are unaccustomed to, except for the fact that we have so much transferability of cultures in and out of the country, and more of them coming in as citizens of the country. So I think the courts are going to have to interpret that the country is going to have to lay down official languages for the country so that they make some sense of what these rules ultimately are going to be.
These things are laid out. I mean, you just said because the population of Milwaukee has reached a certain critical mass, the people who have a right to vote, who, you know, have a right to be able to read their ballot in order to vote. And that's exactly the way the rules have been set up. And, you know, it is absurd to suggest that if you don't speak the language, even though you have a right to vote, you know, we don't care about you. I mean, that is absurd. To me, living in an urban area, living in an urban society, includes living with people of all different cultures and accommodating them. And we know that there are certain, you know, state laws and state documents that people have a right to be able to read if they don't speak English.
And naturalized citizens are expected to know English.
Correct.
Yes, they are. But you know, I'm not saying these people don't know English at all. But what I am saying
then they ought to be able to
they have
read
a right
basic
to
ballot.
read their ballots, and the white English-speaking power structure cannot say, okay, you have a right to vote, but you don't have a right to read your ballot. I mean, that is an absurd position, and it's an un-American position.
Look at New York City, say in the 20s, 30s, 40s, when you had all these people coming through Ellis Island, speaking all these different languages. The ballots then, I assume, were all in English, and they were able to assimilate. The Germans could assimilate. The Irish assimilated.
Great point. That's an excellent point.
As a matter of fact, many, right here in Milwaukee, I'm certain that the German population was so strong that there were German language ballots, and German was taught in all the public schools of Milwaukee. And as a matter of fact, you know, it is not even fathomable that you can say you people have a right to vote, you just don't have a right to read the ballot.
What about if the population isn't big enough?
That's exactly what.
What if there's you know
threshold
500 Hmong who are citizens but don't speak
That's why
English?
for the first time,
Do they deserve a ballot?
The Spanish ballot has been.
But do the 500 Hmong deserve a ballot?
I think there can be a fairness issue. I mean, certainly there is a threshold in place, and there is a policy that's being addressed.
Arbitrarily set by the feds.
And I think it's important to also think about how when people come to this country, that process of maturing, as a population, and what that looks like in terms of the mastery of the language, and it happens generationally. Certainly some people come here and learn it fairly quickly, but we have a legacy of embracing that, of having the German newspapers and all of that. Just it takes time.
That is who we are. We are Americans that welcome all cultures, and if they have rights, they should be allowed to exercise those rights. And you don't arbitrarily make that impossible by saying, if you haven't learned good enough, that's like the literacy
that's
test
part of the
that they
determination.
they were
That's
giving
part
to
of the
African Americans in the South.
Part of the determination of citizenship is that you know basic English, and that you're able at least to read a ballot.
And
they told
and in fact, they don't get their citizenship
It is
without
not
it.
burdensome. Generation after
It's not the
generation
same
has
thing.
been able to do
It's
that.
not the same thing. It's not the same, Joel. It is not the same thing. It is not. No, you're drawing an unfair analogy. It's an unfair and inaccurate analogy.
But Joel sees racism behind every corner.
All right, next topic. We have to talk for just a few minutes about the Brewers. They're doing pretty good. What a great series it's been between the Brewers and the Cardinals. These really are two fantastic teams. Strong hitting, strong pitching, great, smart managers. Now, we're taping this program on Friday evening, so win or lose in St. Louis tonight, the teams will have to meet in Milwaukee on Saturday, or on Sunday. Are you optimistic?
I'm very optimistic. I've been doing all of those things that some people would say are kind of superstitious to make sure that I do my part to help the Brewers win. They did their part last night by...
What have you done to help the Brewers win?
Let me tell you,
have you lifted a bat? Have you thrown a ball?
I've got things on, and I've done some things that have contributed to that win yesterday.
Touched the TBS button 5 times in a row every 3 minutes.
He says he's wearing stuff. I
am optimistic because I think that the Brewers are a better team than the Cardinals. And bottom line is that if they are fielding and come out of their slump, the better team, they're going to win this, even though it looked a little perilous there in the beginning. I still think the better team is going to win out in this, and the Brewers will be in the World Series.
Do the math. It's a best out of 3 now with 2 games at Miller Park. Mm-hmm. So the odds are back with the Brewers. The momentum was totally with the Cardinals, and it's amazing how it just shifted dramatically with 1 game. Having said that, I think after people watch our show and then turn on the ball game, that whoever wins tonight's game moves on to win the World Series. I think this is a must-win. I can't see a team getting a 3-2 advantage, then losing those next 2 games. So tonight's game, critical.
Angela, I don't know if you're a baseball fan or not, but you have to admit this is great for the city.
It's very exciting. I mean, on multiple fronts. Everything from the community building, just the energy, the economic impact. I mean, Miller Park has seen more patrons than ever. And I think it's a kind of a neat example, too, of how a small market team can be successful, which is pretty cool.
Now, if you watched the game last night, they did look nervous. I mean, they did look, they don't look as relaxed on the road as when they play here.
Yeah, it's Jekyll and Hyde.
But I got to say, these are 2 really good teams.
Oh, yeah.
And both teams have good starting pitching. I think Milwaukee has great starting pitching, but both teams' starting pitching has faltered. But what mostly has not faltered for the Brewers has been their relief pitching and particularly the back of the bullpen. I felt last night, once you got into the 6th inning, we were ahead. We had won that game, and I feel that way about the others. It kind of disappoints me a little that people were so ready to give up on them.
Yeah, they were.
When they got back, they got behind 2-1. It was like, the Yankees. I'm sure their fans still believe they're the best team in baseball, and I don't think
Philadelphia too.
Yeah, Philadelphia too, and I don't think that Milwaukee, because they lost 1 game, here in Miller Park, and they were clobbered in that game, but that's baseball. I mean, baseball, those kinds of things can happen, and that doesn't mean you're not an extremely talented team, which the Brewers are, and I'm loving to watch it.
But
and it's great.
If they win this series,
you do have to get good pitching. You can't
yeah.
you can't pitch to
And
Pujols.
we've had
you can't
our
give
we've
up
had
4
our
runs in the first inning.
We've had our pitching letdowns over with now.
Well,
So
I
we're
don't
done
know.
with those.
If they
we've
win
got
this
Markham
series-
coming up, and that's scary.
If they win the series, do we want to face Detroit or
Doesn't
Texas?
matter.
We want to be there.
Doesn't matter.
I think that's
Doesn't matter.
that's
We're there,
the
we
deal.
win.
We're there.
Although.
Yeah.
And I believe that.
Although you're going to get a battle either way because Detroit has the best pitcher in baseball in Verlander.
But that's one guy.
And that's one guy. They've shown they can be resilient, though. And Texas has, like the Brewers, a very solid hitting team. So either one, it's not going to be a picnic, but you have to get there first.
Right.
Do you worry about Pujols?
Yeah.
Everybody's got to worry about it. He's a great player, and just like they got to worry about Fielder and Braun, and yeah, sure. When you see that lineup, the meat of their lineup, it's hard to get through those 2 or 3 guys. It really is, but we've done it.
Just don't give him anything to pitch, even if it's an intentional walk. Don't give him anything that he can get the bat on.
Will you be now in these playoffs? We've seen Fielder get hit by a pitch, Braun get hit by a pitch. Would you be incredibly surprised if we see Pujols get hit by a pitch?
No.
I don't think any of these hits have been intentional.
No?
I really don't. Not in a playoff.
Yeah,
None of the
That
pitches
happens some
because
during this series,
because
but, during the season.
the games right now are so crucial.
Yeah.
You
don't wanna put an extra guy on base.
Even though I said you don't want to pitch to him, you still don't want to intentionally put somebody on base and also risk having one of your players thrown out of the game.
Yeah.
Angela, how do you think Milwaukee looks in the national spotlight right now?
Fantastic.
Does it look good?
I think it looks great.
The whole state.
Absolutely.
Not Laverne and Shirley or Cheeseheads or anything like that?
Well, you'll
Between the
always
Packers, the
have
Brewers.
that, but
You've got the Packers in the spotlight,
Right.
the Badgers in the spotlight, Brewers in the spotlight.
It's national.
Right.
It's even global because there's only 4 of these teams in the world that are where we're at right now.
And these are classy guys. I mean, they're all classy guys. Fielder is a lovable giant. People are just realizing what a nice guy this guy is. And Braun is world class to start with.
Super. Niger Morgan though could use it. The El Carnegie course.
We only have like a minute, but how about your buddies Belima and Alvarez saying, "Okay, kids, no more swearing at the games"? That's not going to go over?
Well, no, but at least they said it, and I think there was pressure on them to say something to them about it because they've been in the national spotlight. Now, the parents always complain, fans always complain about it, but I think what will stop it is if the media says, we're not going to broadcast your games in prime time if that continues.
That'll never happen.
Well, but they may make the threat. So this is the first step towards the athletic program saying, we're making some effort at least to put the clamps down on the language.
Maybe if you, as a former regent, would wear certain items that maybe this.
I've tried that too.
I think we just lost our license.
All right, we move on. Well, they have more travel days, and almost nobody's been eliminated in the early rounds. We're talking, of course, about that other playoff series, the Republican presidential debates. Rick Horowitz was watching the debate earlier this week, and he actually wants to tell you about what he noticed about one of the participants. Rick.
No doubt about it. The most reassuring moment in Tuesday's debate came courtesy of Herman Cain. And it wasn't anything Herman Cain said, or rather it was less what he said than what Mitt Romney said back to him. This was during the part of the debate when the candidates put questions to one another. Mr. Cain had one for Mr. Romney. First, of course, he touted his suddenly famous 999 tax plan. He said it was simple, transparent, efficient, fair, and neutral. It certainly sounds simple. It's one of those plans that can fit on the back of a postcard. And then he challenged Mr. Romney. Can you name all 59 points in your 160-page plan? And does it satisfy that criteria of being simple, transparent, efficient, fair, and neutral? Mr. Romney smiled, but then he answered this way. Herman, he said, I've had the experience in my life of taking on some tough problems, and I must admit that simple answers are always very helpful, but oftentimes inadequate. Simple answers are oftentimes inadequate. A tip of the hat to Mr. Romney, please, for saying what needed to be said. He hasn't been entirely immune to the temptation himself, but at least he's on speaking terms with the reality-based community, with the complexity-based community. And if he does nothing else, if he stays stuck at 23% in the polls forever, if his White House dreams fall short, he's still done the country a great service. He's taken a stand against simple, or more precisely against simple-minded. And these days, in certain circles, that's just short of heresy. Now granted, it's not totally surprising that a man who's been on so many sides of so many issues sees value in nuance, in preserving his flexibility. Did he like the Wall Street bailout? No siree. Is he comfortable with the idea of rescuing individual firms? No way. Were there all sorts of problems implementing the bailout? You betcha. Was he in favor of the bailout when it was proposed? Sorta, kinda. That kind of flexibility. And some of it is the natural caution of the frontrunner looking ahead to the general election. You don't want to paint yourself into an ideological corner. But some of it may actually be something like wisdom. This governing stuff, this economic stuff, this foreign policy stuff, this domestic policy stuff, it's not simple, despite what you're hearing elsewhere.
Well, thanks, Rick, and thank you so very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.